Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pints and Politics. My name is Drew, here with Mike, and we recently got done with our Congressional District 7 convention. I was a delegate, so I was there voting. Mike was a guest. And actually, let's just start. Why were you a guest and not a delegate?
I
Because I think you could have been a delegate if you wanted to.
sure could have. I know it could have. I, as a politician, I do not believe that politicians should be delegates. I believe it's, as I refer to it, as an incestuous relationship when politicians are endorsing candidates. Because if we're taking away the voice of the grassroots, the people, and protecting our own, so to speak, which can happen quite a bit.
So, like nepotism?
A little bit.
A little bit of
A
that.
little bit.
No, that's a very honorable reason, in my opinion. I would think so.
So there was many people yesterday that said, "Why aren't you in there on the floor?" And I had to explain this thinking. I believe that the people themselves should have the opportunity. If there wasn't enough delegates, would I have
Mhm.
stepped in or ran as an alternate? Yeah, I would have. But our area, we had 15 delegates, 15 alternates, right? And all or how many of our
You guys
alternates?
got 15?
I think we had 15 in Todd County delegates
Yeah,
and
we
the
had.
alternates, but we had enough people there. Our seats are full.
Well, that's good. Yeah, we had
So,
8 in Wadena County, and I was pretty
so
pleased to see us seat all 8.
yeah, I think that's great. So for me to take a seat away from somebody else,
Yeah.
I think that's right. No, I've always said this is the voice of the people. Can I talk to, well, obviously the delegates ask my opinion on
Mhm.
stuff, but ultimately the decision is theirs.
Yeah.
My wife is a delegate, and I can tell you she will, ask what I think, but that vote is hers. She's
Yep.
making up her own mind.
Strong and independent woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good because I'm actually kind of in the same boat. I'll explain where I'm at and why I'm voting the way that I am on certain things, but I will not. I'm not going to hate anybody for voting opposite of me. Kind of for a very similar reason. It's just like we're all trying to come together and make decisions as a group, and sometimes we disagree.
Right. Absolutely.
And what was your opinion of the convention?
Um, as a guest, and there was people
Hmm.
there who had never been to a convention before, and we were out in the hallway for the most part, for most of the day. You couldn't be seated because there wasn't enough room. I think the venue left a lot to be desired. There was no cell phone service for a lot
Oh
of it.
yeah,
So it was hard to communicate back and forth. We couldn't hear what was going on. So it wasn't a very welcoming environment. And it was also very hot in there. I run, 5 degrees hotter than everybody else anyways. So for me, it was almost unbearable. But when we seen people that were when I seen people that were guests
Mhm.
and said, is this your first time being a delegate or at a convention? And there were several that said, yeah, this is my first time. If we're not welcoming them, if the situation just seems like disordered, it's not a good way to bring people in.
Yeah. Disordered is kind of an understatement.
It was a little bit rough.
'Cause I guess if you were in the hallway, I don't know how much you got to witness of the first 2 hours.
Basically nothing.
Yeah,
Basically
yeah, we
nothing.
got nothing done in 2 hours, the first 2 hours of the day.
Now we also had a number of elderly people
Mhm.
that were there, and we expect them to stand out in the hallway for hours. There were some that brought some chairs in, but because of different reasons, lack of or fire code or whatever, they couldn't be
Yeah.
seated in certain areas. We're trying to hear what's going on. And sometimes the communication, people would whisper stuff back, or if somebody came out to use the restroom or something, we would get tidbits. But really, that was really difficult for a lot of people, and especially the new people coming into this, not a very welcoming environment. So that was tough. At the end of the day, or the premise, the whole thing about it is we're going to endorse a candidate for CD7,
That's the
right?
goal.
That's the goal. That's what everybody was there for. We wanted to see an endorsement. For myself, like I've said before, let the chips fall where they may. Just get an endorsement, and then let's get behind that endorsed candidate. And to not have an endorsement yesterday was very disappointing to me. Um, three
Yeah.
three rounds of
So,
ballots.
so here's the news, I guess, from the guy inside. We started off our day and we spent 2 hours just trying to figure out our credentials or our preliminary report. But basically establishing a quorum and like who's here from where and do we have the right people seated.
Hmm.
That was the largest issue. And we spent 2 hours finally agreeing like, hey, we're gonna do this. And then we started working on the endorsements. We had three candidates. We had Steve Boyd, Michelle Fishbach, and Annette Watson.
Yes.
And we did our first round of ballots. And then Annette got removed for not having enough. And it was between Steve and Michelle. And they gave speeches. Everyone gave speeches. And we did 3 rounds of voting. We were running out of time because the leadership was only able to book the room until about 7 p.m. And at about 6:15 or 5 after 6, we got the results for the round three, and we have ended up voting to not endorse because it was taking about an hour to count each round of ballots and get a new one going. We just simply ran out of time.
Right, and there's some of those things I think we can improve on. At the
Yeah,
endorsing convention for governor 2 years ago, they used these clickers.
yeah.
You know, that takes the time that it takes to count the ballots, takes that out of the equation.
Well, don't you guys have a switchboard at the Congress?
At the house, there is you can push a button, absolutely, and it just lights up a light up on the board. It also sends a message up to the speaker that shows where the votes are. She can see who's voted, who hasn't. You know, and these clickers, I understand there's the impression that we don't want electronic ballots or voting machines and stuff like that because they can be hacked and fraudulent. The clickers, the way I understand it, is either a yes or no. And we use them at the governor's convention. Possibility of that being hacked or fraudulent, I think is pretty much non-existent. If you want to do a paper ballot on top of the clickers and count them later to verify, it's fine. But for the sake of trying to get those votes done, there was what, 300 and some people there?
It was just shy of 400.
Okay. So to physically count all of those ballots, it takes time.
Mhm.
And we could have moved that system along a lot quicker if we would have just had the clickers and done,
It's a good argument.
several rounds of balloting that way. So I think the day drags on.
Oh.
You know, the check-in end was 9:30.
No, it was 9. We started at 9, and well, we wasted the first 2 hours of our day essentially.
Well, but that's part of the process too because of
Yep,
credentials.
it is part of the process.
So they've got to make sure that the right people are there or can be there and all of that
Yep.
stuff. So you say you wasted time, but at the same time, um, it takes time to do the credentials and
Yeah,
everything else. So you're filling in dead space basically. So
that's
is there
fair.
ways to streamline that? I would hope so. I would think that we'd
Yeah,
have a program that we could, enter the names, verify, and do all of that stuff a lot quicker.
yeah, that's
Um,
fair.
but I'll say this: I know some of the people that were working on the credentials and doing that stuff. They do an amazing job. They really do. It's difficult. Is there something better? I would hope we would try to find something better
Yeah,
than the way we're doing it now. There's got to be a system. There's got to be something in place.
yeah. So the news, I guess the main news coming out of this is that CD7 did not bring forth a endorsed candidate, and now we have a primary on our hands. And
Right.
primary vote is in August.
Exactly.
So
So
that'll be fun 3 months. I'm really hoping that it doesn't get ugly because it is internal, but we'll see where it goes.
for for my take on this, I have been against primaries. I believe that the primaries cost us a lot of money and it pits us against each other for months. And those animosities are really hard to get over.
Hmm.
That's why I wanted an endorsement so bad yesterday. We get an endorsement, get behind the endorsed candidate. We don't have that now, so what do we do?
Well, I was willing to go like all night. I'm just saying, because I would have like if
There
we could
has
have
been
stayed there until midnight plus, I would have been there until midnight plus.
there has been conventions that have gone,
Hmm.
really long. Um, but we have this is where we're at now.
Yeah, this is where we're at.
So what do we do moving forward? And I've given this a lot of consideration. And I'll explain my viewpoints, and we might be at odds here, but I'll say this: the bigger picture comes into play here. Okay,
Hmm.
I didn't understand because there has been tension between like Tom Emmer and some of the other Republicans with Trump. They've been almost never Trumpers, I believe Tom Emmer was. And if I have that wrong, I apologize, but I thought he was a never Trumper. When Tom Emmer was going to run for Speaker of the House, there was things that flew back between Emmer and Trump. Um, there didn't seem to be any love there, and all of a sudden there came out an endorsement for Trump from Emmer, Stauber, Fischbach, and Finstead.
Mhm.
And that really, I just kind of wondered what the heck was going on there. So, looking at the situation, and I really didn't understand it, but some things started clicking, especially yesterday. Well, actually, before that, Minnesota is at play
Mhm.
on the presidential election. It really is. Tom Emmer is head of the RNC, basically the money in the party. He's also Trump's campaign manager, leader here in Minnesota.
Okay.
Okay. So the bigger picture here is winning the state of Minnesota for Trump. So are they putting aside their animosity that they had before between Emmer and Trump and some of the other ones and Trump in order to win the state? Because really what's at stake here is the electoral votes. If Minnesota, because I believe we're an all or nothing state,
We are.
if Minnesota goes for Trump,
That's huge.
that is huge. That means all the electoral votes go to Trump. The bigger picture here is Trump. So any money we spend on primaries in the state of Minnesota can affect that. And you can look at CD7 and say, well, that's way over here and it's not going to affect the general election. There's going to be a Republican there anyways. I understand that. I understand that argument. But if we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is what's going to be probably spent on CD7, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars we're spent fighting amongst ourselves and not flipping the state. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of advertising that we could have had for Trump.
Is that going to come from the RNC?
And I believe there'll be money from the RNC. There'll also be donations from the people themselves, giving to Fischbach or Boyd to campaign against each other, when those people could be donating to Trump's campaign or to, flip this
Mhm.
state. Those 10 electoral votes
They're big.
are huge in the state of Minnesota. So in my mind, Michelle Fischbach had, the
54%.
majority of the votes, did not make the 60% that we have for an endorsement,
Mhm.
but she had the lead. I believe that the people should get behind Michelle Fischbach and support her and not have a primary. I hope Steve Boyd looks at this and realizes that what's better, the bigger picture here, is winning Minnesota for Trump. The other fights that are taking place, and down in CD2, it sounds like there might be a primary down there as well. That is literally, once you add up all of those primaries that could take place, you could be talking millions of dollars in the state of Minnesota that should be spent in those 10 electoral votes.
So I guess yeah, it's tough when you put it that way. It's really tough. And where I'm at is, I guess I'm still at Vox Popularum right now. Let the people decide it. It was open up now to the people in the primary, and if we can't decide it, I guess it has to go towards the populace. And that's where I'm at. And I'm playing the short game right now. I'm not looking that far down the road. I'll admit that. And now that you mentioned like these endorsements coming across, if they were never Trumpers, and Trump is super popular among just Republicans in general, the lay people, did they endorse Trump because they wanted to get endorsed so they could win re-election?
I'm sure there was a strategy there.
Are they going to bail on him when they win election?
Once again, look at the bigger picture here.
I know. See,
We-
we're coming
you
at
could-
this from two different angles.
But you could take the grassroots and say, yes, we support the grassroots, the
Mhm.
voice of the people, Vox Populum, right?
Yeah.
And say, this is the voice of the people, let it go to primary. And then we lose the country.
Yeah.
Because if Trump does not win, we might win this battle in CD7. I shouldn't say we, but the people might win the battle in CD7, but we lose the war.
So could we do So are you asking for capitulation from to get Michelle to win, or like maybe should they negotiate
I would hope there would be a sit down
and then we can get
between
something?
Steve Boyd, Michelle Fishbach, and say, look, what is the best way, bigger picture here to move forward?
Yeah, because maybe Michelle could adopt more grassroots into her strategy, and then that would probably be able. Then she could market herself like, look, if let's say Steve does step down, then Michelle can be like, look, he stepped down. I'm going to take on these causes that are from him for his support.
We
That
often
would be a winning strategy. I could get behind that a
we
lot.
often do this in politics where we automatically villainize the person that runs against an incumbent. That's
Mhm.
not right. Look at what Steve Boyd has done in a relatively short amount of time with the limited resources that he's had available to him. You can't look at that and say, we want no part of that. Yes, you should embrace it. You should bring that
He's put
in.
in a lot of effort.
He has.
Season 7 goes from Roseau to Marshall.
So now, why would you try to stamp that out? Why would you
Yeah,
try to
you
stifle
can't.
that? Embrace it. Maybe this isn't Steve Boyd's race. Maybe there's just something else in the future for him. Maybe he has a place in, who knows? Maybe it's running for a different position somewhere else. Maybe it's a position inside the party, to be a voice of the grassroots inside the party itself. Maybe there's a better option, and maybe they need to sit down and say, let's hash this out so that we don't waste all of this time,
Mhm.
all of this money going to primary. I've said it before, primaries kill us. Every dollar we spend in a primary is a dollar we're not spending against the Democrats. We can't do it. That infighting does not work for us. So I know there's going to be people that are going to be upset with what I'm saying. We look at the bigger picture here. And this is really about taking our nation back. Sometimes we need to step back and say, this is not about what I want. It's about the bigger picture. It's a little bit of humility. I understand there's a lot of pride that comes into
And
elections.
sacrifice isn't meant to be easy. It's not.
So,
It's gonna hurt.
and yeah, how do we move forward? There was a lot of great people there yesterday. We got to visit with people on both sides of this argument. Um, I was really hoping for an endorsement. But when we don't have that, what do we do? And now we got to look at the bigger picture here and say, okay, how do we move forward? I hope they sit down. I hope they talk. I hope they realize that both sides realize we can't push each other away. We need to work together.
Yeah, that was. I didn't really see a whole lot of animosity between the delegates while I was there, and maybe it was just people getting up and arguing, just civilly, hopefully. But no, it was kind of sad not getting the endorsement. We got everything else done, which I want to take the silver lining that I can. We got our delegates move forward. We got some
Well, there were
couple of
some
good
other
people.
things that took
We
place as
got all
well.
of our resolutions taken care of. There was one of the resolutions actually did bother me, and we struck it down at the very last thing we did was strike it down this one resolution.
Which one?
The one where they were talking about rewriting the party platform and then
Oh,
condensing it down to 127 words. Like I'm all for striking things. If we want to restart, we don't take that approach first because that's kind of like Congress saying, "Hey, we have too many laws. Let's put in this law saying we have too many laws, and we'll start rewriting it." If you want to rewrite the party platform, we'll be like, "Hey, we're gonna make a motion at the state level or at like have the whole congregation together. We're gonna remove the platform entirely and rewrite it, and then we're gonna spend all day or all weekend redoing our whole platform."
so what I didn't realize, because this topic has come up, I love a good, political debate.
Hmm.
And we were discussing the party platform recently. Scott Jensen, had came up with his own version of the party platform, and we were discussing this with some others, or I was discussing it with some others. I didn't realize that the party platform had been consolidated about 10 years ago, give or take.
Really?
Was 100, or they shaved off like 26 pages of the party
Okay.
platform, consolidated it. Some of those things, and one of the resolutions that came up yesterday was the what we call the blackout bill or the carbon free
Mhm.
by 2040. That's really legislative. That's not necessarily a platform issue. It's a legislative issue. And some of those things should have been the delegates bring this up and say, okay, if you're going to run for office, what do you think about this legislative issue? Not putting it in party platform because
Mhm.
those things have timelines on them.
Yeah.
That's not a platform issue. So, but coming to the realization that the platform has been adjusted and changed in 10 years, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that.
Mm. Well,
And how many other,
the platform is supposed to reflect like these are our beliefs, these are our values, this is what we stand for, right?
yep.
So you're right there. It shouldn't be legislative action. A lot of them say legislative agenda on them, like this is what we want, and that should only be 2 years. And then those legislative agenda items that we see in the platform should be stricken every 2 years and re-added.
So therefore you're changing the platform if you're going to do that.
We should
Or it should be separate.
it should be separate, and then it should be an attachment, and then the attachment is just gone. The platform is the same, but then we just have new attachments every year,
Next question I have is how many people have even read the party platform?
front
How
to
many?
back.
Yeah.
Two.
Okay.
At
I'm
least
one
two.
of those two.
I'm saying at least two, and I am not one of them because I am not the most well read. I'm working on it,
So
but
I've read
yeah.
it. I've looked at it many times. We are the party of smaller government, and I can't quote
Mhm.
the whole thing. Pretty much
Very
within the.
anti-slavery.
Well, I would think
Well, it
that would
is.
be
It
pretty
is.
clear.
That's the Republican Party was founded as anti-slavery. In fact, the very first paragraph of Minnesota's constitution, the state constitution, says we never were and never will be a slave state. So Minnesota was founded as a free state. The first paragraph. Hot take, I know, but that is one thing, and it's kind of like everyone's like, yeah, of course we're anti-slave, but sometimes we need to remind ourselves of our values,
Yeah.
even if it's the basic, like, yeah, I like to eat food. Well, yeah, who doesn't? Well, you don't want to starve, right?
Guilty.
So it's just sometimes we need to remind ourselves of the very basic things.
Yeah.
I guess my argument, tangent, but
Well, and I think there's a reaction to when we hear they want to change the party platform.
mhm.
Well, what are you changing it to? It's kind of like when uh, we've heard this before about different things we want to. Uh, I'm sorry, Convention of States. Convention of
Mhm.
States says we need to change the Constitution. There's obviously a reaction. Whoa, pump the brakes here. Do we really want to change the Constitution?
Well, the thing is, Article 5 brings out amendments that then get voted on.
Well, I understand that. So what I'm saying is there's going to be an initial pump the brakes before you just decide. I always refer to the Ten Commandments when that comes up. People aren't following the Ten Commandments. Do we just say, you know what, it's time to rewrite the Ten Commandments? Let's look at the situation here. Step back, take a breath. Convention of States is kind of that thing. I have had many discussions on that. I will continue to debate it,
Okay.
but anywho,
Well, I'm going to hit you with one argument
all right, we're gonna disagree.
before we move forward. So when it comes to Article 5 Convention of States versus the Ten Commandments, government is not God. That's kind of, I guess, where that's my argument for you. We, the people, form our government. And if we need to change something, we can. The law of God is set in stone.
Sure. What I see though is if we were simply following our Constitution and our state constitution as well as federal, we wouldn't necessarily have to rewrite it. When a big thing that always comes up with the Convention of States is term limits, right?
Yep.
But this is how the system works a lot of times. The incumbents are protected. And I think that's where the issue with even in CD7, people view this as um, we want new blood in there from time to time.
Mhm.
But in a lot of cases, incumbents are protected. So it feels like we need to put something in place so that you can vote out or that the incumbents have a chance to get thrown out, basically. Um, Not always the best process, I guess.
Well, how about as many terms as you want, but you have to take one term off every other term you're allowed in.
Um, I think there's other ways to fix this.
Yeah.
Take the money out of elections, I think
How do you do that?
that would be very difficult. That'd be very
Yeah.
difficult.
Well, like all things, if you want to change anything, you need a plan because change for the sake of change is not necessarily a good
Not
thing.
necessarily a good thing.
Because was it when they were booting Mike McCarthy in the in DC? Well, who was their backup plan? Did we know at the time? At the time, no.
No,
Was Mike Johnson the initial guy they wanted in?
wasn't even close.
So
His name never even came up. Emmer's name was thrown out there
yeah,
and
so
just got trashed.
we had
So,
all of this chaos for about 2 weeks, right?
hmm
And was it necessary? Maybe, but would it have been a lot less chaotic if they had a plan like, hey, this is what we're gonna do?
right.
It would have been a lot better, and then it would have been a lot better on the optics. People wouldn't be looking at the Republicans like, oh, they're just all fighting each other all the time.
Well, and even now you've got people who are looking at Johnson and saying,
Yeah, now they want to boot
well,
Johnson.
we want to boot Johnson. So that's sake for the sake of change. You wanted something different. You got something different. Now you're not satisfied.
And
then what?
we're what 6 months out of the election. Like we can be patient with this.
Right.
Mike Johnson isn't being the worst person, and so there's spots where you can negotiate, and I feel like people don't want to negotiate. Does that make sense?
Well, we get so drawn into our camps, and I can
Hmm.
understand that to a certain degree, but are we looking at the bigger picture most of the time? So we're circling right back to CD7 and saying,
Well, that's kind of the theme, isn't it?
I think that's going to come up a lot
It
today.
is. It's gonna be. Well, it just happened. It was a big event. It was big drama. I don't think anybody's necessarily happy about it. I know I'm not necessarily happy about it. I'm trying to find the silver linings because I want to make the most out of it. We're forced into this primary. Would it be better if there was endorsement? Obviously. And as we experience the fallout of this, we're gonna have to work on devising a plan
Right.
and how how much money is going to be thrown at this, how much is needed to be thrown, how much can we allocate towards that bigger picture.
My
And,
argument is, should we be spending any money fighting amongst ourselves?
and should it even be a fight? Why can't we be civilized?
Well, and I've talked about this with candidates before. It does not have to be adversarial.
Yeah,
It doesn't. Um,
I really hope it doesn't because this has the potential of getting really ugly. And
yes.
I saw some of that ugliness during discussion. Oh,
Well,
the other
there's
night.
passion involved.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you know, it is a little excessive. It's like I know you want to win, but don't go down the dark road.
I will say I was pleasantly surprised. There were some individuals from different areas where obviously we're on opposite sides of the camp here. Several of them came up, shook my hand. Good to see you here, Mike.
Yeah.
Had a nice little conversation. I appreciate that because I do not view them as my enemy. I'm glad they don't view me as their enemy. Enemy. We have different ideas.
Yeah, because again, we're working on the small picture. CD7 was a small picture. The endorsement is the small picture. And the big picture is winning seats in the House for the authorities where we can actually make legislative changes.
Well, and I think the bigger picture here in the state of Minnesota is Trump.
Yeah. Well, the thing that worries me is like hopefully Trump can quell some of this stuff because we got. Have you been noticing all the college campuses that are protesting?
Oh, that actually came up yesterday.
Yeah, big segue now.
We're sliding into a different topic here.
We're talking about the bigger picture now. So Trump gets elected, right? We saw riots all over the place in 2020, and he wasn't really able to stop them. But now we have riots, well, not quite riots yet, but we're getting protests in all these college campuses for Hamas.
So, here again, we are the
Yeah,
party of law and order. We're also the party of free speech.
yeah,
Democrats, for the most part, are the party of free speech as long as you agree with them.
yep.
If you don't agree with them, and then it seems we need to cancel the cancel culture, all of that goes on.
Mhm.
So if there are protests, if there are civil protests at these college campuses, we should say this is your freedom of speech. I I may not agree with what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. I mean, this is something that gave our country that freedom. We should say, I don't agree with what they're having to say. These protests at those colleges. At the same time, they have the right to say it.
Yeah.
They do.
Have you seen some of the videos that came out?
I have not.
I
I
s-
watched very
I'm
little
gonna
bits.
I'm gonna describe this one to you that I saw, and it kind of creeped me out. It was uh it was at Columbia University, and I know Mike Johnson went there and gave a speech. But before that, I saw this video. Apparently, there's a tactic called the human microphone, and so they'll do like a check, and they'll shout. The person will shout something, and then everyone will repeat it.
Hmm.
And so this human microphone person decided they wanted to boot out a Jew. They found a Jew and they wanted him out. And so he's screaming like one step forward, and the whole crowd just as a zombie horde. One step forward. We are going to kick. We are going to kick this person out of the community. It's like stuff like that.
Hmm.
And so by saying these things, he was getting the mob to do what he was saying through this human microphone and getting everyone else to repeat it. It was super creepy. I probably would have bailed the second just out of sure creeped out. It was almost cult-like behavior.
Wow.
And so if that becomes super prevalent, they won't listen to the authorities anywho.
But that's what I say about a civil protest.
Yeah.
When it gets out of hand, yes, do the authorities need to take precautions? Do they need to step in if it gets out of that? And bringing that up, like you said, Thomas Jefferson, which the Democrats really seem to like for some reason, said that democracy is nothing more than mob rule.
Mhm.
That's why we're a republic.
Well, even the Athenian democracy wasn't mob rule. They actually had something like they would elect a chair committee, kind of like what we saw at convention. They would elect people like that to run these events, and then they would elect leaders. It was very democratic, but they would vote on a lot more issues.
Well, that's still you're electing somebody that's a representative government.
Yeah, it wasn't a pure democracy. It wasn't mob rule, but it was more democratic than a republic because everyone would vote on everything convention style. But you would elect the people to run your conventions.
So the other thing I think that gets people upset, especially about these college protests, is if the president just wiped away student debt for so many
Mhm.
people. That means who's paying that bill? Mr. John Q. Public, your tax dollars are going to pick up the tab for somebody that is protesting against an issue on college campuses. So you're paying them to do what exactly?
To protest certain
To
issues.
protest certain issues? And is that right? I can understand where people are upset about. There's an unfairness, and we've talked about this before.
Mhm.
Just the impression of being treated unfairly is enough to upset people. I mean, that's
Yeah.
human nature. So if you're paying for the bill so that somebody can go to Cancun for spring break or be on a college campus and protest, you're there to learn.
Or get drunk at a party, even.
That's true. If you're going to foot the tab yourself and you want to go to Cancun or protest, fine. But if I'm helping pay that bill, then I have an issue with it.
Well, it goes back to the idea of government being a charity. And how many times have we said this? The government is not a charity. In fact, I want to know which one of us said it first. You can, if you can fact check us in the comments.
Yeah, we'll have Ethan scroll through and see what he can
No, no,
find.
no, 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 no. We'll get the comment section to do it.
Okay.
You guys figure it out.
By the way, shout out to Ethan.
Yep.
Had supper with him and his girlfriend.
Last week.
I don't know that I can say her name because I've never asked if I can say her name on this.
We'll just label her as Ethan's girlfriend for
Okay.
now.
Had a very nice meal with them on Thursday.
Yeah, last week.
Yeah.
We'll say last week.
Yeah, Thursday. Had a nice sit down, discussed some things, talked about some great subjects. And I always enjoy when you sit down with somebody. And I feel like an old man doing this. I'm 48, but Ethan's 30. And had a great discussion. And something just hit me about the replacement of the religious institutions with government. And it just solidified something. And it was like the light bulb came on. And I was tired as heck, but enamored with the idea the rest of the evening, so I planned on taking them out for supper. And when the bill came, he said, Ethan's like, well, we're separate, split the ticket. And it was like after we paid the bills, I went, I was going to take you out for supper, Ethan. And I messed that one up. So I owe you supper. We'll have to go out again, but I appreciate the conversation. It was really good. Actually, I look forward to it, the next time we get together.
So what was the light bulb moment?
Well, that whole replacement, there's so many issues that we're dealing with in government that are not government issues.
Mm-hmm.
That is a religious institution issues. Government has stepped into a role that it shouldn't be, and it's creating the division and the polarization of people. If your church says that abortion is good or bad, and you don't like that point of view, don't go to that church. But when government fills that role,
It tells you whether or not it's good or bad.
exactly, now all of a sudden you can't lead the opposing thumb of government. And if something is legal or not legal, you're against that. So now you've got these people taking religious issues and hitting them against each other because government has filled that role that it should not be filling. So it just, something we've talked about a little bit, but it was a great conversation. And like I said, I was really tired, but all of a sudden I just went, whoa. Another point.
Yeah, that is neat. Yeah, because the government is not God. And again, should the government be doing education then, or should that be from the communities?
In the state of Minnesota, it is written into the Constitution. But if you look back, and we're gonna go down on a rabbit hole here.
Well, I was just looking for a quick opinion. I got one more segue I want to do.
Okay.
So just a quick opinion. We can dive into it next time.
There are some that say that the role of government is to have an educated population.
Mm-hmm.
There are also many that were in the early education formation in the United States that intended, and they wrote about it, that it was the replacement of the religious schools by a state-run school system. So it was to get religion out of people's lives.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole.
That's a big discussion.
We will go on that another day.
Another topic.
I have one last thing I want to talk about
All
today.
right. What are we in?
So again, we're sticking with the concept of news. Actually, there's two things, but I'm going to narrow it down to one because I don't want to talk about the other one. Maybe we'll get to it next week.
Okay.
Last week, there was a senator from Woodbury, Minnesota, who went up to Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, and burglarized her stepmother, Senator Nicole Mitchell. It's public information. Broke into somebody's house, tried to steal at least a laptop, maybe an urn, and then the stepmother tripped over her while she was trying to hide while the stepmom was calling the cops. Thoughts?
The optics are horrible. As a senator, should you be held to a higher standard? I agree we should. Or a House member as well.
Any elected official.
Any elected official, yes, should be set to a higher standard. We're also the party of law and order, meaning everyone innocent until proven guilty.
Yep.
How this is going to play out, and I think just in a lot of politics nowadays, we're quick to just hammer an issue. Oh, look, somebody screwed up. Let's jump on this.
Mm-hmm.
Take a breath. Obviously, this person is dealing with something that is difficult. For her to do what she did, obviously is very, very bad. We don't know all the details. Let things run its course to a little bit.
She deserves her day in court.
I agree.
So I guess she is an alleged criminal. Let's be real.
Yeah,
Alleged, because
alleged
innocent
criminal.
until proven guilty.
Right.
However, they did find her in the home.
Yes.
So optics-wise, terrible. Memes on it, fantastic.
It's a certain amount of humor that goes with it. I will agree.
Yes. So
At the same time, the process now has to be the Senate is going to go through an ethics committee or an ethics complaint.
Yep.
I believe that's scheduled for the beginning of next week. I think it's the 6th. And that process will have to play out.
Yep. And according to my inside guy in the Senate, also your inside guy.
You have an inside guy?
I do now.
Oh.
Moving up in the world, I have inside guys. Not quite 9/11 level, but I have an inside guy. That's a joke. That's a joke.
We'll cut that, Ethan.
Anywho, what I've heard is that this is going to bog down the Senate, so for the next couple of weeks, and they won't be able to push through any kind of bad gun legislation or any kind of search and seizures and bog down some other issues that I would rather not see go through.
Right. How those things are all going to play out, it's anybody's guess at
Mhm.
this time. I know there's a lot of people that are like excited and this is going to happen, that's going to happen. We don't know really until that final gavel falls. We don't know how things are going to play out.
I'm just looking
Um,
for silver linings today. That's me.
um, I hope we don't have bad legislation ever.
Well,
You know,
yeah,
because
obviously.
there's a cause and effect to every one of these pieces of legislation,
Hmm.
and let's look at the safe storage, and I'll hit this just briefly. You can say that we need to have safe storage to save lives from kids who will harm themselves with, I'm going to use this term, PPE, personal protective equipment.
Well, I get.
I
I
think
that.
that one's
I need to
great.
start saying that on the floor.
Yeah, PPE. We're
Yeah.
not going to call them anything else but PPE. So we're going to try to make sure that kids don't lose their lives with this. At the same time, this is the cause and effect. There are, and I've got to verify this number, but I think there's about 3 million incidences every year where PPE is used to protect and stop crime.
Hmm.
How many examples of there is there of somebody who breaks into a house? A person has their PPE by
Their
their
personal protective equipment.
their personal protective equipment by their bedside, take it out and protect their castle. A man's home is his castle, and deter crime. I believe there's way more instances of deterring crime with a PPE,
Yeah.
personal protective equipment, than there is engaging in crime. So that's my 2 bits on that one.
I like it.
But that's that cause and effect. You can put a piece of legislation in that intending to do one thing, the effect of that can have way bigger impacts and more detrimental impacts.
Yeah, just like the Uber drama going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're like, we need to set prices so they can make more money. Well, now they're leaving, and then you're gonna end up with more drunk drivers.
Look at the chaos that
Yeah.
could ensue because of this.
Yeah, drunk driving. Drunk driving. I'm calling it. It's prediction. I mean, I still haven't had verifications on my tiny homes prediction, but I'm very confident in that one. I haven't talked about the tiny homes
We
lately.
have talked about the tiny homes, but I think, with the squatters rules, maybe
It's-
we don't need tiny homes
I
anymore.
know.
Just move into a house that's
Free house.
yeah. Babylon B just had a
Did they
skit on
really?
that. It's hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
Shout out to the Babylon Bee.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think we'll wrap it up today. We
Yeah.
got through. Yeah, we got through everything we wanted to.
yeah, I
Yeah.
believe so.
But thank you guys so much for watching Pints and Politics. I have a dog here trying to lick my leg.
Abby.
I hope you all have a good day. Thank you so much for watching. God bless.
Thank you.